F1 called out for Bahrain and Saudi GP after Russia cancellation, blood on hands. The Bahrain Grand Prix will kick off the 2022 F1 season this weekend as Red Bull's Max Verstappen aims to defend his world champion status. Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes will be gunning for his record 8th title, and will also be looking to settle the demons of last season's controversial finale. While fans eagerly anticipate the action on track, pre-season has also been impacted by politics off the track. The sport has cancelled the 2022 Russian Grand Prix and terminated its contract with the host nation after the invasion of Ukraine. But F1 organizers have been accused of ignoring human rights abuses taking place elsewhere. Speaking to Express.co.uk, Vice Chairman of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Formula One, Lord Peter Hain, warned the sport will face questions for hosting races in countries such as Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. He said, "I do think there will be and should be a continuous debate around all venues that hosts F1. For example, in Saudi Arabia, 81 people were executed in a day last week. A lot of them were political prisoners. That is not a regime anybody could be happy being associated with. Any driver whose hand is shaken by the Crown Prince is shaking the hand of someone with blood on his hands. There was the murder of Jamal Khashoggi and the atrocities taking place in Yemen rival Russia's actions in Ukraine. The first race this weekend is in Bahrain, which has a terrible human rights record. You see this with its treatment of its Shia community. We have even seen people demonstrating peacefully against the race because they think it sports washes Bahrain's human rights record, being beaten up, locked up and exiled. That is indefensible. I would hope that drivers will speak out in a consistent way. The world has rightly condemned Russian barbarism in Ukraine, and F1 to its credit has taken a strong stand on it. But F1 needs to be aware of this and be prepared to speak out, whether it's Bahrain, Saudi Arabia or China. It's inevitable that F1 will be scrutinized. This week, a letter from the Bahrain Institute for Rights and Democracy, BIRD, has urged teams, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, GPDA, the FIA and F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali to not overlook the atrocities in Bahrain. Syed Ahmed Alwadeh, who serves as Director of Advocacy for BIRD, said, "The FIA and F1 have taken a principled stance against the atrocities perpetrated by Russia. To not take the same stance on atrocities perpetrated by the Gulf states would send the message that our lives matter less. I was tortured at the hands of Bahraini officials and members of my family are imprisoned, in retaliation for my human rights work, including urging F1 to adopt a human rights policy, which F1 has still failed to apply. My case is just one example among thousands of the repression within Bahrain and across the Gulf." Hamilton has been arguably the most outspoken driver on issues relating to human rights, and this week he received a letter from a prisoner in Bahrain. Ali Al-Haji wrote to the 7-time champion explaining how the Mercedes star had made a difference, and explained that the political prisoners and prisoners of conscience in Bahrain's jail prison had previously boycotted watching F1 because of its history with sports washing. He said, "Your genuine concern about these cases has changed the way prisoners think of this sport. To us, you are our champ, not only the best in driving but also a human being who cares about the suffering of others. To reflect our support to you, a new phenomenon spread in the prison. Inmates began to write or draw Sir 44 or Lewis 44 on their clothes, which we would wear in support while watching the race." Al-Haji claims he suffered torturous practices during his interrogation and was sentenced to 10 years in prison simply for organizing peaceful protests. The Embassy of the Kingdom of Bahrain said, "Bahrain has led human rights reform in the region, suggestions otherwise simply do not reflect current-day reality." Bahrain has a zero-tolerance policy towards mistreatment of any kind and has put in place a robust system to investigate complaints. Independent bodies such as the Office of the Ombudsman, the first of its kind in the Middle East, conduct investigations and undertake periodic inspections to assess prison conditions. Allegations of mistreatment are fully investigated, and public reports are issued with recommendations based on the findings. A new police code of conduct and comprehensive training for those working within the justice system has placed human rights at its center, and justice reform, whether related to judicial reform or alternative sentencing, is producing better outcomes. No person in Bahrain is arrested or is in custody in connection with a peaceful political activity. Freedom of opinion and expression, which includes the right to protest, are expressly protected under Article 23 of Bahrain's constitution. Attempts to single out Bahrain in the Formula One calendar is absurd, lacks context, knowledge of what is actually happening in the kingdom, and entirely undermines the enormous strides and leadership Bahrain has shown in this area. Bahrain welcomes and actively supports the role Formula One can play in shedding light on human rights issues in all countries it operates in, now and in the future.